views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and journalists and editors and videographers and filmmakers and artists, which will come up later in the program. Really anybody who's putting stuff out in and about the borough of the Bronx. And we're going to start off with my longtime buddy, David Cruz. People in the Bronx may know him from the Norwood News, but he's a staff reporter over there at Gothamist. Nice to have you with us, David.
Hi, Gary. How you doing?
You're doing well. I'm always excited, and David is always right along the way. He's got a journalist's attitude. I like that. Dave, let's just talk about the primary. There's so many things we could talk about. I think 4 council members did reach the 50% threshold. I shouldn't say already council members, but 4 Democrats will be on, the Democratic candidates in the fall. What are your thoughts of how the election went in the Bronx?
I kind of feel like it kind of went with where like the prognosticators were saying in terms of who were the likely winners for the races. I was particularly, just kind of focusing in on the 11th council district race with Eric Dinowitz, who had previously won the seat through a special election in April, and then looks like he's in the lead right now, although he does not have the 50% needed to avoid a ranked choice voting runoff process. And so like that's going to, remain to be seen as to whether or not he'll be able to hold the seat. Although from what folks have been telling me, it looks like he is a lock to win. Then of course I was paying attention to the 13th council district race, which became more interesting after Mark Jonah decided he wasn't going to run. And so this paved the way for Marjorie Velasquez, who had previously ran against Jonah in 2017, and she had gotten party backing. And then, of course, the 15th council district race, once again, it was a special election win for Oswald Felice, and looks like he's going to likely secure the seat once again. So overall, it was kind of a good night in a way for the Bronx Democratic Party as well, because they had all the 4 who they had endorsed, I think, a few months back, are leading in the races, if not actually have clinched a win. So I kind of thought it was also a good night for them as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you think of that. There was only one race that's real close, and that's the one in the 18th. Amanda Farias leads by like 96 votes over William Rivera. Do you think any, just in terms of evaluating ranked choice voting, any of these are like we're going to get a big surprise? Like, for example, Eric Dinowitz would get defeated. Perina Sanchez would get defeated in the 14th. That ranked choice will really come into play. Of course, it could come into play in the borough president's race as well, right? I mean, let's be honest.
The only thing about, obviously, with predicting an outcome under ranked choice voting is very hard, because you don't know whether or not all the voters had made choices for all 5 candidates. And so it's conceivable that some voters have just decided to do what's called bullet voting, where they just essentially just vote for one person and they don't make choices for anyone else. So, that kind of, it's hard to sort of make a guess as to like where the pendulum is going to be swinging, because ranked choice voting is just something, at least to this scale, we've never sort of seen before. So this is sort of like a remains to be seen kind of a process. And we'll, obviously by now we'll probably have known the outcome, but
we should mention we're taping this earlier, several days earlier than it's going to air. So anything is possible between now and then.
Correct. And that's also the thing too. It's like I'd like to see how many people who voted cast a number 2 or number 3 or number 4, number 5 choice, because it's not as if everyone has to pick all 5. And I think there was a little bit of confusion when I went out to the polls in terms of like people trying to figure out whether or not they needed to do all 5. the bottom line is that it's possible that, some voters decided to just do one.
Right. Or their second choice was one of the people who's going to be eliminated early on. I mean, you
Correct.
just don't know. Anyway, Dave, I want to talk to you about an article you wrote, which I thought was fascinating, and it's right to the core of what people are talking about in the Bronx. And the headline is, "The Bronx has the highest crime rate in New York City. What do locals want the next mayor to do about it?" What did you find?
Well, one thing I kind of wanted to do was kind of get away from this political bubble that I think journalists tend to be in sometimes. And we all talk about what we think people are sort of like assuming, or like making like, these broad sweeping generalizations. So I decided to actually go and do Man on the Street. And I guess, since we're talking about this show, talking about journalism, Man on the Street is very hard. Sometimes it's, it depends on who you get and who's
Yeah,
willing
you
to
could
talk
you
to you.
could get people who tell you stuff that's just wacky or very unusual. It could be those are the only two or three people who think that, and now all of a sudden you've scanned the whole thing in that direction.
Right. And
Believe me,
that's
I know that very well.
right. And so like I decided to spend a few hours in the Bronx and go around separate neighborhoods to talk to people about crime. And the thing is, for the most part, most people were saying crime is a problem in this borough, and they were not trying to cast a political sort of like aspersions to it. They were simply just saying it was bad, and they want any mayor. And I wasn't looking for like who they thought would be the best mayor necessarily. I wanted to see what their solutions would be. What would they want to see happen? And so
And they said,
many of them, they took a very different turn. Some wanted more cops in the neighborhoods. Like I went to the one section within the 48th precinct, which is, in Belmont, the same place where Lissandro Guzman Feliz had been killed. And a lot of folks over there were saying, we need more police. At least three or four people I spoke to over there said that they wanted more cops. But then there was another person that I mentioned in the article. He wants to look at crime from a holistic approach. He wants to sort of fix the issues that cause people to sort of pick up a weapon or decide to resolve conflict, through violent means. And so they were taking an approach that Maya Wiley would have adopted, or Diane Morales would have adopted. And so, but the bottom line here is that many people essentially said that they feel that there's a feeling, a tenor within the Bronx that has made them feel slightly a little bit unsafe. One woman I spoke to, she just said that like come 5:30, 6 o'clock, she's at home. She doesn't leave the house. She said that
because she's scared.
because she's scared.
That's
And she
terrible.
said if she needed to go to St. Barnabas Hospital, which is a few blocks away, she'll call an ambulance because she just can't see herself walking
Wow.
the streets.
Think
So I
about
thought that
how
was pretty
horrible
eye-opening.
that is. That's terrible.
Yeah, and I felt like, there's, people like we tend to politicize crime a lot. But when you want to talk to people who don't have a stake in politics, and who are not treating crime like with a political lens, you begin to see there's a very different sort of like feeling on the ground. And that's kind of like the takeaway
Mhm.
that I got.
I think that what you just expressed was really both sides of the spectrum, because there certainly are many people who obviously who say they don't like the idea of defunding the police. They want more police. Goodness knows, no matter who you are, we need police protection in our neighborhoods. We need a good NYPD. I think then the second person that you talked about, is talking about kind of a holistic look, a social service look at it. And I think you're going to need a multi-pronged approach. I thought what the police department did recently, they were kind of forced into it, that they're now beginning to train police officers how to deal better with mental health calls. To me, that's just a waste of everybody's time. We have social service people that can do that, spend the time coordinating them, but the police department is so they don't want the idea of their budget being cut, so they think they have to do it. I think that's the kind of leadership we're going to need from City Hall to straighten this out. That's my feeling. So I'm one of the guys in the Bronx that you talked to.
Right. Well, and I guess it's so funny because like shortly after I had written that article, we saw that shooting that took place within the 44th precinct, near the Mount Eden Claremont section, where those two kids were nearly killed because they were caught in the crossfire between a gunman and the intended target. And Eric Adams had gone over to that section with the Bronx Borough president. And it made me think, like, what kind of a mayor we may very well see if Eric Adams indeed holds his lead, in the sense that he may very well head out to these neighborhoods, and he may want to just sort of like take a more on the ground look as to what's happening, because I don't think any other mayoral candidate had done that as well. So it just made
Sean Donovan had been around the Bronx, but let's focus on Eric Adams. If you look at the maps, the voting maps, Eric Adams really took the Bronx. I mean, let's be clear. Whatever the color they used was blue or whatever it is.
Right.
He took the Bronx. I think people, number one, like the idea of a cop who really knows what's going on. And number two, I think there's a level, from a criminal justice point of view, a level of trust that he's not only a pro NYPD guy, that he understands this tenuous relationship between police and communities. That's my sense.
No, yeah, and I think you're right too. I think his resume essentially said that here's a person that, yes, he was a cop, but he was also skeptical of the department as well, to the point where he used that he kind of used that as part of his platform, that he was not necessarily a typical rank and file. He's the guy who had questioned stop and frisk. Right. Not to the point where he says you have to eliminate it, but to the point where he kind of got the sense that it was being abused. And also bear in mind, I think too, his story is kind of like that of a person who's trying to change, who was a victim of the police department, who's trying to change the system from within, seemed to have resonate with voters.
I think what he was doing there was distancing himself from somebody saying, "Oh, here's a cop." That kind of thing. Dave, we're almost out of time. What do you got coming up? Anything interesting we ought to be looking at, or everything?
I'm still paying attention to what's happening. I'm hoping that we get an outcome with the Bronx Borough president's race soon. That seems a little bit too close to call in terms of really predicting like a winner at this point. Who knows? Ranked choice voting could turn things upside down, and absentee ballots.
Who knows? Dave, we got to go. My good buddy David Cruz, find him on Gothamist, and always a pleasure to have you. Don't go away. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk to Lovie Pignata, who just painted a beautiful new mural. Don't go away.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311. When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. It is my pleasure to welcome back my good friend Lovie Pignata, who is an artist, an activist, a woman about the Bronx. Go Bronx, support the right initiatives, support arts and culture. That's where we will find Lovie Pignata. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me
Uh,
be here.
Let's kind of check in and see where you're at. We're going to talk about a mural that you did that I think is very important because of where it's located. But just talk about some of the things you've been involved in. I saw that there was a residency program on Governor's Island. Just talk about some of the stuff you're doing.
Sure. During the pandemic, I was pretty busy making artwork. I did some restaurant barriers. I did some logo work. I painted a food fridge. I did some, food outreach. I completed 2 murals. One at the Bronx Botanical Market, which is a store at the corner of Pelham Parkway and Fordham Road, as well as a large mural at the Boys and Girls Club on 189th Street in Lorillard.
Which is specifically what I want to talk about. Let's just step back. In general, the pandemic was very difficult, but I think for me and for a lot of people, it inspired us, I don't want to say to look inside, but to do things that culturally will help us heal. And murals and artists and public art, you say you did it for restaurants, that all of a sudden had outdoor seating and all that. In your mind, what's the advocacy? What's the value of that? And why are you so passionate about doing it?
Well, I think it's nice to see colors and taking a look at some art will give you a little break from life and some inspiration for people that aren't artistic, just to see something nice on the wall, something new to notice. I know during the pandemic, I was painting more and getting more work for art, which I was surprised that that's when I started getting more busy with art than anything else.
Yeah, I think it really it makes sense to me is that people. I mean, listen, we all know what we went through, but as you say, colors reminds you that there's real life out there, and people, if they were shut in, they were being creative. And you had to do something, and so I think there was a lot of that. So let's talk specifically about this Boys and Girls Club thing. This was kind of a collaboration, really, as I understand, from Fordham University, which is nearby. Just talk to me about setting it up, and then we're going to look at the mural, and you put out a couple of nice videos of what it looked like when you were creating it. So let's talk about the entity entities that were involved?
Sure. The Fordham Bronx Advocates is a new extracurricular group at Fordham, which is the Fordham students trying to integrate with the rest of the Bronx. They're kind of on an island there. And, many of them stay there. So they started an initiative to interact with their surroundings. And this was the first large project for that new group at Fordham. It was the brainchild of Mark Nason, who many people know his name around the Bronx, and Lisa Preddy, who is another another Fordham person.
Yeah, a personality there. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Dr. Nason, of course, is the founder of the Bronx African American History Project. I think the philosophy has been that there is this huge university that occupies a significant amount of space in our borough, and because it's a private university, and people don't necessarily come from the Bronx who attend there. It's always, as you said, been an island, and why not have the resources shared? Number one, the incredible culture and history, and we know what is in the Bronx, but also the resources of the university. Maybe we can begin to incorporate some of those to build up our communities. So the idea was to do something good for the Boys and Girls Club, which is right down the block, right?
Yes, it's very close to Fordham. So Lisa was on a lunch break, stopped by, spoke to the director Yolanda at the Boys and Girls Club, because we were looking for a wall to do a large project, and they were excited about it. They got the go ahead from their main office, and there was a bit of a pause because this was all talk long before the pandemic. The funds were raised very quickly through Fordham alumni and through Fordham channels, and we started the project in I think the very beginning of April, and it includes.
Well, this just underscores what I was saying. There's resources there at Fordham University. They came up with the funding, and all of a sudden we have a beautiful mural. Part of this was about, it's symbolic of food insecurities. It's not like we just kind of painted something pretty. Talk to me about the theme, and we have pictures of it. Producer Rebecca Hemick is going to show the pictures. There's really these cool videos that you created, so you could see, the people actually working on it and developing it. But talk to me about thematically what the idea was.
The idea was to incorporate some of the tenets of the Boys and Girls Club. One of them is healthy living. They mentioned that there used to be a garden outside in the fenced area in front of the mural. So it sparked the idea to give them a garden. Back then, it had nothing to do with the pandemic or food insecurity. So it came before that, but it ended up being more symbolic later on. Now that is a hub for food to be distributed. There's fresh produce that's distributed at that Boys and Girls Club. And we also raised additional funds from local Bronxites to rebuild the garden beds that were there many, many years ago.
I was going to ask you about that. As I told you, I happened to be by there. I was over at the junior high school, the middle school that's across the street, and I noticed it. And it was interesting that the wall is fenced in. And I was saying, boy, that's a great place for a garden. So that is the plan, that they're going to reconstitute the garden.
Yes.
Oh, I'm happy about that. That's great.
Yes. So I gave them a garden on the wall, not knowing if the garden in front of it would be completed. But we did raise the funds while I was painting.
Wow.
A small foundation in the Bronx, the Northeast Bronx Farmers Market, is going to donate a box, and that's where the donations will run through. And we're going to be building those by the end of the summer. So it will have growing food, for early fall. So that's the next part of the project, and that's an all volunteer project.
So this really is, the beauty. People say, well, okay, so they painted a mural, but here it is. I hate to use the pun. It's going to grow into a garden, into inspiration for the young people who, go to the Boys and Girls Club, and all of a sudden, there's life. That really to me is the best of it, and the beauty of it. Talk to me about the design. You did it yourself. You did it on paper. How did that work? How did we create this thing?
Well, I took a picture of the wall just to get an idea of it, and then I printed that out and drew on that to work out the design. I did add more fruit. I added a few more vegetables. The mural's about 75 to 80 feet long, so it's kind of a meandering mural. It's hard to capture in one photo. It needs a panoramic.
I was going to say meandering is not fair, and I would never have said that, but you said it. And yes, I can appreciate that, because I took pictures and it was hard to like stand back. I don't know if I would have had to get into an airplane or something. How does this relate to other murals you have done or other murals that you might do? Is in other words, all artists have a continuum. Where does this fit in the continuum of you as an artist, as a muralist, etc.?
I think it's just a continuation of interacting with the community while I paint, after I paint, and it stays like a living mural or living artwork. When I had my installation at Virginia Park, there were canoes, there was painting, it was very active. We did many events there. This is similar in the sense that it's going to turn into a garden. It's going to continue. It's going to stay activated. It really activated the space instead of just making a wall colorful. It just kicked off a lot of activity, and the help of the Boys and Girls Club and Fordham volunteers really got a lot of people involved in this project, and we'll continue to invite other people in with the gardening part.
All right, now I'm going to make a little prediction. Other projects you're going to do, you're going to be hearkening back in your mind and say, well, wait a minute, we did it there. I'm not just putting up a mural now. Let's see if we could do something. Let's bring some more kids in. Let's connect it to another project. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I hope that my next project is interactive as well. I always like to have the input of the people that are going to live around it, because that's really who it's for. I may visit my artwork more times than most artists. I feel like I do. But the people that live around it, I want them to be happy with it. I want to talk to them when they're walking by and ask questions about it, or they want to jump in and pick up a paintbrush and help. So the next project I hope would be just as interactive and continue along those lines.
So now anybody who says, you know what, I got a restaurant, I got a wall in my neighborhood, how do they find you on social media and other contact information so that people can say, hey, I like what Lovie's about. I like her attitude to the Bronx. How do we find her?
My name is I Lovie New York.
That's good. I like that. I Lovie New York. I like that. That's good.
I Lovie New York. It's on Instagram, at Gmail, Twitter, Facebook. That is the easiest way to find me.
Great. Lovie Pignata, thank you so much for not only this one, for everything that you do. And I think it's great. I think, you're preaching to the choir, more culture, more artwork. This stuff, it will, to pun again, it will grow. And that's how we're going to continue to build the Bronx. Lovie Pignata, thank you so much. And folks, thanks to David Cruz. And we'll see you next time on the Bronx Buzz. Good night.